Today I'm showing you how to make brown butter pumpkin spice sourdough coffee cake. This is one of those recipes that makes your whole house smell incredible. It's absolutely delicious and is a great way to use up some of your sourdough discard. Plus, I'm sharing all my tips for nailing that buttery streusel topping and a sweet maple glaze. This might be the perfect fall bake. Pumpkin, warm spices, brown butter, maple. It is so good. Let's get to it. One of the things that makes this coffee cake so good is the addition of brown butter. So I'm gonna head on over to the stove and we're gonna start browning our butter. It's gonna be delicious. The first step is one of my favorites, brown butter. This takes just a few minutes, but it gives the cake a nutty, caramelized depth that regular melted butter just can't match. Place 1 stick or 113 grams of butter into a small saucepan over medium heat. So you want to make sure that once this starts to melt that you're stirring it pretty regularly. So we're going to let this melt. It can go from brown to burn very quickly, so we want to watch it closely. So what's going to happen is that it's going to melt, then it's going to foam, and then we're going to see little golden bits forming at the bottom of our pan. As soon as it smells nutty and turns that toasty brown color, we want to pull it off the heat and set it aside to cool. That is our beautiful brown butter. I love this recipe because it has two of my very favorite things. That is pumpkin and browned butter. Now, don't skip the brown butter. It makes such a big difference in this recipe. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna start by putting together the wet ingredients. Now, there are two ways that you can make this recipe. The first way is what we're doing, where we're using our sourdough just as a sourdough discard. The second way is that you can actually long ferment this batter, and I'll show you how to do that later on. So if you need to have fermented flour for whatever reasons, you want to do a traditional sourdough with a long ferment, you can absolutely do that with our recipe here, and I'm going to show you how to do that later too, okay? But for right now, we're just going to start making the cake batter for our coffee cake. Now, we're going to be making the cake batter. We're also later on going to be making the buttery streusel that goes in the middle of the cake and also on top, and then we're going to make a maple glaze. So 3 parts to this recipe, but we are going to start with the wet ingredients and making our coffee cake batter, okay? So the first thing that we're going to do is that we've got 266 grams of brown sugar. Now, I'm using dark brown sugar, but you can also use light. You should use what you have. And all of the entire recipe is going to be posted down below in the description. Now, I'm actually going to be calling out the ingredients here by weight, but in the recipe description, you'll see the ingredients by weight and by volume. So if you're one of those people that still wants to use your measuring cups and teaspoons, that's totally fine. All of those weight and volume measurements are going to be down here in the description, okay? So now we're going to add our pumpkin puree. We've got 240 grams of pumpkin puree. Seriously, we had like one rainy day and I'm already like, okay, time for fall, break out the pumpkin coffee cake. Okay, so there's my pumpkin puree. I'm gonna add 2 eggs to this. Did you know that 1 large egg weighs about 50 grams? So if the recipe calls for 100 grams, you're gonna use 2 large eggs. I've got my sourdough discard here. This is 120 grams of sourdough discard, so you're able to use up a good amount of your sourdough discard. You want to make sure that you're not using really old discard that's been in your refrigerator for like a month, because that's going to be too acidic and too tangy, and we don't want our coffee cake to be tangy and acidic. So this is about 3-day-old sourdough discard. I wouldn't use anything that's past like 5 or 6 days old. It'll just be a little bit too tangy. And then I've got my sour cream here. This is 57 grams of a full fat sour cream. I don't recommend that you use a low fat or a reduced fat. This is not a healthy item, okay? So let's just let all the fat stay in and have all that good and yummy flavor. And then I'm gonna add 1 tablespoon of vanilla extract. And I know that sounds like a lot, but it's gonna be delicious, just trust me. And then the last thing that I need to add is gonna be my melted butter, my browned butter. This is 113 grams of brown butter. But before I add that, I'm gonna just mix this up a little bit. Now I browned my butter and I let it cool slightly. It's still a little bit warm. So I'm just gonna add a little bit at a time because I don't want to cook my eggs. So just gonna add a little bit at a time. If you have a stand mixer, this is a great time to use your stand mixer. but I'm gonna do this by hand in case you don't have one. I want you to be able to see what this looks like when you do it by hand. All right, let's add all of that yummy browned butter and all those brown butter bits. The brown butter smells so good. It's nutty. It kind of smells like toffee. It is so yummy. And then once you've got these wet ingredients incorporated, we're gonna start adding in our dry ingredients. So let me give this another mix. Get everything mixed up nicely. We haven't even added the pumpkin spices, and it smells so good. All right, we're almost done with our cake batter. We're gonna get our dry ingredients and add those. Okay, now we're gonna combine all of our dry ingredients, and we're gonna do that in a separate bowl. Now, I used to not be a fan of using a separate bowl because I'm like, why would I wanna get another dish dirty? But you do wanna do that because we've got a lot of pumpkin pie spices and things like that, and we wanna make sure that they're all evenly incorporated in the flour before we add that to our wet ingredients. So I've got 210 grams of all-purpose flour here. Woo, little flour cloud there. 2 teaspoons of pumpkin pie spice. And I'll put a recipe down in the caption for homemade pumpkin pie spice if you don't have, the pre-made one. And then we've got 1 teaspoon of baking powder, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, and 1 teaspoon of salt. Let me get the rest of this baking soda in here. Okay, and that is it. All right, I'm gonna use my whisk and just whisk this up to make sure that everything is evenly incorporated. That way you don't end up with like a bite of the coffee cake that has a bunch of the pumpkin spice in it and then the rest of it has no flavor. So I don't skip this step, even though I don't like getting another bowl dirty. Okay, pretty easy. I just used a whisk to whisk all of that together. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna fold the dry mixture into our wet mixture. And that is it for our cake batter for our coffee cake. All right, so. There we go, we're gonna add a little bit. Give it a little stir. Add the rest. Okay. We're gonna mix this up just until there's no dry bits of flour left. It smells so good. It's perfectly fine if it looks a little bit lumpy. Resist the urge to keep mixing because you don't want to overmix your batter. That will lead to a tough cake. But I know that's kind of hard to do because it can be pretty satisfying. Okay, all right, there we go. That is our pumpkin spice brown butter sourdough coffee cake. That's our cake batter. I'm gonna stop right there. We're gonna make the streusel next, which is so good, and then we'll start putting this cake together so we can bake it. No coffee cake is complete without an amazing buttery, crumbly streusel topping, so let's make that topping right now. All right, I have got 240 grams of brown sugar. I've got 75 grams of a white granulated sugar, 180 grams of all-purpose flour. We're making a lot of crumbly streusel here because we want to put it in the middle of our coffee cake and then also on top, so we need a lot. And then we've got 1 tablespoon of cinnamon. This is going to be so good. And we're going to do just a pinch of salt. That's good. All right, I'm going to mix this together with my whisk. I'm doing a little whiskey here to get any clumps of that brown sugar out. And then I'm going to add 1 stick, which is 113 grams of melted butter to this. I mean, everything about this coffee cake just smells good. I just want to eat it. And I love that it comes together so quickly. I mean, you can mix this up, get it in the oven, and have it ready to eat, like, honestly, an hour and 15 minutes after you start. Not bad. Okay. This is mixed pretty well. Now I'm going to add in my melted butter. Anything with like cinnamon, brown sugar, and melted butter is a win in my book. All right. Now this is gonna kind of look like wet, crumbly sand, and that's exactly what we want. So let me mix this together, and then you might have to get in here with your hands, and that's okay. Okay, let me get in here with my hands and finish mixing this together. Made a little mess there. That's okay. I feel like I'm like mixing my sourdough right now. But you want this to kind of be the texture of wet sand. And that's what we've got. Perfect. Okay, that is our delicious, crumbly streusel topping that's gonna go in the middle of our coffee cake and then also on top. Okay, perfect. I'm so excited for this cake. All right, we're gonna start assembling our coffee cake now. We're gonna take half of our coffee cake batter and put it in an 8x8 greased pan. So this is just my 8x8 pan. I sprayed it generously with some nonstick baking spray. You could also line it with parchment paper if you prefer. I'm gonna put about half of my batter in there, and I'm just eyeballing it. We don't need to get fancy with it. Let's just do what's easy. And then I'm gonna spread it around. And once you've got half of your batter in the pan, you're gonna add half of your buttery streusel topping in there. And this is what's gonna be in the center of your coffee cake. All right. Okay, I think that was about half. Maybe let's add a little bit more. I think I was a little short there. Okay. I wish you could smell this. All right, now we're gonna add half of our streusel topping. Look at that. Spread that around a little bit. Perfect. Now we're gonna add the rest of our batter right over the top. I'm just gonna kind of spoon it over this time, and then I'll spread it out just so I can make sure it gets kind of evenly spread out over my crumble topping. Okay, we want to get it all. We don't want to miss any because this is so good. I can smell the brown butter, the pumpkin, all those warm spices. Now my oven is preheating at 350 degrees. It's been preheating for about 40 minutes, so it is good and hot. And then you just do your best to spread this around, cover up that streusel topping. And then we're gonna put the rest of our crumbly streusel right over the top of this, and we'll get it in the oven. There we go. Okay. I'm just gonna get in there with my fingers a little bit, get it spread out. You really can't screw it up. It's gonna be delicious no matter what. Okay, all right, now we're gonna take the rest of our crumble topping and put it right over the top. Now, when I told you that this was a generous amount of the topping, I wasn't lying. We're not skimping on the buttery, crumbly topping, because I think that's the best part. All right, there you go. Now this is gonna go into a 350-degree oven. It's gonna take between 45 and 55 minutes. We wanna bake it until it's golden brown, and if you insert a little knife or something in the center, a toothpick, it's gonna come out with just a few crumbs on it. So it's gonna take 45 to 55 minutes. Let's go put it in the oven and make the entire house smell like pumpkin spice. I'll be back. All right, while our cake bakes, we're gonna make our maple glaze. Now the maple glaze we're gonna put over the top of the cake once it's cooled, and this is one of those things that just puts it over the edge. So I have got 113 grams of powdered sugar, that's 1 cup. I have a tablespoon of maple syrup because this is our maple glaze here. Yum. I have a teaspoon of vanilla extract. I'm gonna add a pinch of salt. And then I've got a little bit of water here. This is about a tablespoon of water. Now I'm not gonna add the water yet. I'm gonna mix this up just a little bit, and then I'll add a little bit of water at a time until I get the consistency that I want. So let me add a little bit of this water. Give this a good mix. You can make this as thick or as thin as you want. Also, I'm using water, but you could use milk or cream or half and half, whatever you have. I like to use water just because I'm gonna have this coffee cake sitting out on my counter for a couple of days while we eat it. And for whatever reason, I feel weird about having milk in the glaze and then leaving that sitting on the counter for a few days. So I like to use water. You can't taste the difference anyways. All right, there is our glaze. I think this is a good consistency, but if you want it to be a little bit thicker, you can add more powdered sugar. If you want it to be a little bit thinner, just add a little bit more water. There you go. And we will drizzle this over the top of our cake once it's cooled. Now, our coffee cake was in the oven for exactly 60 minutes, and for the last 15 minutes, I had it covered with a piece of foil so that the top didn't get too brown. I don't want to burn that amazing streusel, crumble, buttery topping that's on top. Now, I mentioned earlier that if you didn't want to do this with sourdough discard and instead you wanted to have a fully fermented brown butter pumpkin spice coffee cake, that I was going to tell you how to do that. Well, this is where you will learn how to do that. Now, if you want to go the extra mile and fully ferment the flour for better digestion and to get that signature sourdough tang, here's how you would do that. The night before, you're going to mix the flour, your sourdough starter or discard, you can use discard, sour cream, and a couple tablespoons of the pumpkin puree, just 3 tablespoons of the pumpkin puree. Then you're going to cover that and let it rest at room temperature for 8 to 12 hours or in the refrigerator for overnight, okay? And that will ferment the flour for you. And then the next day, you're gonna mix that fermented mixture into the rest of the wet ingredients and then proceed with the dry ingredients. You'll make the streusel and then you'll make the glaze, okay? So that version is especially great if you're sensitive to gluten, but you can still eat it, or if you just want a more complex, deeper flavor. And again, you can do that still with discard and it still will ferment the flour and just make it a little bit easier for some people to digest. And there you have it, brown butter pumpkin spice sourdough coffee cake with a maple glaze. I am so excited to eat this. It's one of my all-time favorite fall recipes. As soon as the weather gets cold, I'm ready to eat it. So what I have here is my maple glaze that we made earlier. I'm going to give it a little stir. And then we're just going to drizzle this right over the top. And you can put as much or as little of this on as you want. And if you don't like maple, you don't have to put the maple syrup in here. You'll just add a little bit of extra water or milk or cream, but you can completely leave the maple out. I just love that kind of warm flavor that the maple gives to the coffee cake. And of course, I'm gonna use all of my glaze because I'm just that kind of person. I want all the glaze on the cake. And I want the bite that has like the most glaze on it. So that's just the kind of girl that I am. Oh my gosh, it looks so good. And the house smells so good. All the pumpkin and those rich, warm spices. This is going to be absolutely delicious. All right, there we go. Okay. Let's get a piece of this because we have waited long enough. Take a look at that. It looks so good. I'm so excited to bite into this. There we go. And you know what? Since I made it, I get to have the first bite. You've got that streusel topping. It's going all the way through the cake and also on top. It's going to be buttery and crumbly in our maple glaze. I mean, this is absolutely delicious. You need to make it. I mean, honestly, I thought, how long will this cake last us? But really, I think that it's probably going to be gone by the end of the night when everybody gets their hands on it. It is so good. The perfect balance of fall flavors. So, all right, let me set that down so I don't keep eating it. If you found this helpful, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss any of my sourdough tutorials. And let me know in the comments if you're gonna try the quick version with the sourdough discard or the long ferment version. And if you're a beginner sourdough baker and you're looking for tips on how to make sourdough bread, I've got tons of videos where I walk you through the entire process step by step so you can have a sourdough win. So hit that like and subscribe button and check out another one of my videos.